We're still struggling to hang on to some board members. I'm going to move now. We're going to hold off on the standard and assessment. We're going to go to ESSA. Superintendent, I'll have you take the point on this.
Okay. I just want to give you a quick update on ESSA because we need some board action on an item. As you probably are aware, we're down to the wire in getting our ESSA plan approved. Each week, there seems to be one or two more that get approved, so now we're down to 4 states. That includes Utah, Oklahoma, I think they're getting close, California, and Florida. At issue for us is wanting to stick to one plan, and the board voted to not have to deal with two different plans of accountability. And so when we look at our particular sticking point, there are a couple of things at play. One, we just had some technical requests by the department when they reviewed our plan last. So we've been having multiple calls. Secretary DeVos, Jason Botel have both reached out to me personally. They reached out to the governor as well. And they only do so not understanding our governance model in spite of our talking to them many times about the role of the board. But nonetheless, I know it's really important to them that our governors are involved and sign off as well. So one of the pieces of information that they felt that they needed in looking at our title plans and the way we were writing our overall plan for the funding, there were just some technical issues that it didn't mean that we had to change anything. Either it wasn't something that they were clear about or they couldn't find in our plan when it was really there. We just needed to add a couple of things. So Deputy Norman was on the call with staff earlier this week, and we feel very confident that as we send those things back tomorrow that we're clean on all of those elements. So the final sticking point is participation rate. The ESSA calls for 95% participation rate, and we're currently at 94%. And our state statute conflicts with that requirement, as well as we feel like there's conflicting language in the federal requirement as well that allows for parent opt-out, but then requires a 95% participation rate. So we've had a lot of dialogue, and we've used every legal lever we think that we can find. And we want to, and I will just say, we as your staff want to stay firm to the action that the board took early on, and that is to stick with one plan. We have proposed to Secretary DeVos and Jason Patel on behalf of the department that we could perhaps seek a 1 year. Oh, and let me go back, sorry, and say that, as you know, we submitted a waiver that was rejected. And that was a lot of back and forth about, can you really submit a waiver if you don't have your plan passed, et cetera, and negotiated to be able to request a waiver before we submitted the plan. That was denied. So now here we are, sort of at an impasse, if you will, and we came up with a solution that we'd like to propose that the board support, and then we will put that into our plan with a submission letter, and that is to ask for a 1-year reprieve from the 95% participation rate requirement, and then the board work the next year on a solution with likely maybe a legislative solution even, that, and that could be whatever the board thinks it is, but just giving us a year to really look at that element and try to get a solution that aligns with the board's philosophy about where we're at. So I will just be very forceful and say I want to dig in a little bit and say let's not go down the road of 2 plans. And I in talking to other states, I believe that they have been able to negotiate and get the things that they need. And we also have seen some precedents from a few other states whose plans have been passed that are either similar to ours or akin to ours. So it seems like there's some variance on the timing when plans were passed, either at the beginning of those who applied first to those who applied now due to maybe some political pressure in between. So we're really appreciative that the department does keep calling and working with us and negotiating. I think I've had several conversations with Secretary DeVos and Jason Botel. We've had face-to-face with them, and I just publicly want to say that they continue to try and work with us. So We want to get there, but we want to do it the right way, aligned with what the board believes and what we believe is best for students. So we would like to have the board's support via a motion to support our asking for that one-year reprieve.
Okay, we've got quite a few questions here. Board Member Lisa Cummins.
So my question goes to, with that 1-year reprieve or postponement, if you will, that would include the implementation of the new RISE test and the new Pearson test, correct? And those scores would go to that, towards that?
Well, it wouldn't impact anything that the board's already doing with accountability. It's really looking at how we deal with the participation rate reporting. So some states have gone to using two plans to say, all right, we'll comply with that federal piece in this accountability system, and then we'll continue with our state accountability system, and we will report 2 sets of school grades or whatever their accountability system is around that participation rate.
Okay.
But all the assessments, all of that, it doesn't impact those or hold those up in any way. Whatever trajectory we're on with our current plan, that still would stay in place.
Okay.
Board Member Stokes.
First off, I'd like to thank you for working with Jason Botel, whose title is Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary, delegated the authority to perform the functions and duties of the Assistant Secretary of Elementary and Secondary Education.
2 breaths.
What's the
You did
acronym for that?
It's a big one, yeah. I'd make the motion that we authorize the superintendent and board chair to request a 1-year exemption to the 95% participation.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Board Member discussion, Board Member Lear.
And I just want to make sure the state doesn't lose anything, there's no penalty. We just ask for another year to figure this out, but we don't forego any funding because of that. Is that true?
The department has mentioned that if we don't get our plan passed, that it could be
Meaning
in
amended.
jeopardy.
Meaning amended.
Passed. So passed
Oh.
means that you have to, whatever you put in there
But even
has
as
to be
is.
passed. We don't have a plan that has been approved at this
Approved.
point.
Oh,
So
we're
this
vi-
is in order to get a plan approved.
okay.
So it'd be in the form like of a cover letter asking for the
We're a little
Reprieve.
bit vulnerable,
I see.
and time's running out. We've augured in, and there's been a lot of work to hold this course because of how opt-out and some of this is working, and so this is a good way to go. We believe it'll pass, to ask for this reprieve, and if I might, well, I can speak because I'm the chair. There's a couple things that can happen. There's some stuff that can happen on our end and some stuff that can happen on the federal end to ease up what this challenge that we're having with our opt-out percentages. And so this gives a little time to address some of these issues, and keeps that funding, that $100 million coming. There's what's the jeopardy? It's $100 million, or they could say, okay, we're going to take your administration portion. They could do a bunch of things. There's not anything that says they will do this if you don't do that, but it's a risk, and we want to move on that. And if we can get it passed, that's great. If it doesn't, we might be back having another special board meeting to another plan D or E or whatever one we're on moving forward. So I appreciate the motion. Board Member Wright.
This is a question for the superintendent. It just seems the federal government's such a paper tiger. I've been hearing this for years. I mean, have they ever withheld any material amount from any state in history for failure to comply with anything, to your knowledge?
Well, I'm only aware of our state, and they haven't with our state. I can't really speak to that. I will just use the language that they've used with us on the phone, and that is, come July 1, we don't have a mechanism to provide you with funding.
Okay,
If you do not have an approved plan, we do not have a mechanism to provide your funding.
Which I just
Which-
find
I
amazing
don't know what
if
that means, but that's
President
what they
Trump
keep
would be
saying.
the first one to ever withhold a material amount. Because the political implications would be so heavy for them.
Well, there's certainly still risk associated with this, and we have this opportunity to mitigate it by this action, I think. Board Member Lisa Cummins.
before we voted on the waiver last time, Spencer Stokes, sir, you had proposed to challenge the Department of Education. I'm curious as to, will we be the first state to do that? Will we be able to say, you know, for the longest time since this new administration, we've said local control, and they've said, you know, that parental choice and local control are their top priorities. Will we push that and let us have a plan for our state that best fits our needs, regardless whether they think it is appropriate or not? At the same time, you know, of their threat, of their wording, they will too also be under the microscope of will they or will they not withhold funding, you know, and you know, what's the backlash on their end? Will they be doing that? You know, is this playing chicken? Or is there more, are they gonna stand up to what they said and say that it's going to be local control?
Okay, Superintendent, will you respond?
Yeah, I think that's, you know, that is an important question, and I just want to reiterate that we've been negotiating point by point all along, and we've stood very firm that we think we have a state plan that works best for our state, and that we're not interested in conforming with what other states do, but what is best for our state, while keeping in mind that we're being accountable for the title funds that are coming to us. So all of those negotiating points along the way, we are now down to this one point that we think we have something that the Secretary did not commit to, but seemed open to, and that is giving us this reprieve. Yeah. There's a window cracked open, yes, and I believe Florida will ask for something similar. So, you know, there are those states who just said, we just don't have the energy, nor do we want to play this game with the federal government, so we'll just run these two plans. And you all have been very clear that you want one plan, and so that's what we're standing firm on.
Yeah, follow up. Oh, sorry, I didn't know I turned it off. Hang on a sec.
We just want to make it very clear we stand with parental rights, and you know, and standing with what the statute says, that parents are their primary caretakers. And if this state plan to conform with a Department of Education's definitions violates that primary state statute, then we are doing a disservice to our constituents who elected us to protect those parental rights.
Okay, let me just back up before we keep calm. We have a motion on the table and seconded from Spencer Stokes. So we're still commenting on that. Board Member Reeby?
I'd like to share some numbers with you. We have 4,660 kids in foster care. We have 21,000 DCFS services calls last year. We have 3,000 families in poverty, and we have 1,605,000 kids who are not Caucasian. When we talk about parent rights, we're talking about these kids' rights. When we play chicken with $100 million, these kids are being affected the most. 4,666 foster care students are going to lose money. 21,000 students who are in child services with DCFS, they're losing their services. 3,000 kids in poverty are losing their services, and 165 kids who don't associate themselves as white are losing their services. I am very frightened about playing chicken with $100 million for these kids. Now, just because their parents maybe don't speak English, maybe because their parents don't treat them very well and they're in foster care, maybe because of some kind of traumatic event that happened in their lives, they are now the most vulnerable students we have in our system. When we talk about parent rights, I also want to talk about these kids' rights to get the services they need. This concerns me greatly playing chicken with $100 million when these students who have the least amount of advocates for them are the ones that are losing the most. So these numbers are first and foremost in my mind when I talk about this ESSA plan. And this concerns me greatly because I work with these kids. And when they don't have this funding, it's going to be serious changes in their lives. We talk about safety in our school. We talk about at-risk kids. We talk about how kids that aren't getting services become a bully in our schools. These are the kids that we're trying to help and lift up and change their hearts and minds and give them a safety net. These kids have rights too. And, you know, as a parent, to say that you don't opt your kid out of a test is fine. Who's telling us that we get to opt these kids out of these services? They're not here. I'm here. I'm here to tell you that I'm not opting these kids out of these services. I don't think it's right. I think that these kids deserve more of our time. Because when we look at where we're going as a state, if we don't bring these kids up, we're going nowhere. So please consider these kids who have no advocates or the least amount of advocates, that they need us more. So please consider not playing chicken with $100 million for our most vulnerable students.
Okay, there's 5 board members that have some comments, and just to let everyone know if somebody's, so you guys can keep your comments maybe really focused. Board Member Stokes?
So I think we've made a lot
Mark,
of.
will you put me in there too? I'm sorry. I'm just kind of waiting till everybody's done, but.
All right, okay. Board
So
Member Stokes?
I think we need to keep in mind that we've negotiated down to this one piece, which is this 1-year exemption on 95% participation. The second thing is, we have to remember this is Congress's plan, ESSA, right? Passed by Congress. And so it's a law. So we're playing chicken with a law, a federal law. But with that being said, I'd move the previous question.
Okay, we have a called question would end debate. So we'll vote on it. A lot of lights just clicked off. So all in favor to call the question and debate, all in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed?
No.
Okay, one no. Okay, the motion before the board is that, will you restate the motion? I think I have it pretty good, but I want to make sure it's perfectly stated. Okay, just one sec, okay.
Okay, the motion is that the board authorize the superintendent and board chair to request a 1-year exemption from the 95% participation rate requirement in the ESSA plan.
Okay. All in favor, that is the motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? We have 1 nay. Okay. We will certainly report. Kathleen was the name. Board Member Lear.
I know that's a lot.
Yeah, I turned your mic off there. Okay, well, we have our marching orders on the ESSA. You have anything else, Superintendent, on that?
Now, well, we should be able then to resubmit by end of week, next week at the latest, right?
Okay.